Hey everybody, Maporino here. Welcome back. I'm joined by Subsourian.
Hello, hello.
Hey, so it was BlizzCon this week, and that's going to be our topic.
Yep, we're gonna look at BlizzCon. Also, Jaber. Also, I'll do the plug. Maporino's starting if you haven't seen, so submit maps for that.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar, Maporino is where I just say, if you made a map, send it to me, and I'll play it at the end of the deadline. If it was rotting in your maps folder for 2 years, you could still submit it. You know, it's cool if you make the map in the window, but it doesn't have to be. As long as I can play it by myself as single player, send it my way, and you'll see it played on stream.
Mm-hmm. And so BlizzCon came out, and this year was for those who missed it, it's a virtual stream. And if you did miss it, also all the archives are free on YouTube, so you can go back and look yourself if you want. There's no dumb virtual ticket that you have to pay $50 for, which is nice. Kind of small smattering of announcements, to be honest. The first was the Blizzard Arcade Collection. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
Yeah, it's interesting. The weird part about this is all the games in there are already available completely for free on Battle.net. It's just a very little known secret. You can download all these for free. Lost Vikings, Rock and Roll Racing, and Blackthorn.
So how much is the Arcade Collection now?
Let me look it up.
I know you get it for I was going to say for free. I mean, if you paid for one of the 30th bundles, it wasn't technically free, but it came with that bundle.
Yeah. The thing I like, and this kind of going to be a common theme, is this is not just a PC release. It comes out for Switch and other consoles as well.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
And Switch has become a big selling point for me, like the fact I can do it on mobile. Hold on, why isn't it? Okay. Sorry, the store page for it's a little unintuitive.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Why is it? It says you get it through PC only through the bundle. Interesting.
Probably for now. I imagine it'll be released eventually for actual money. But that's funny because the implication is they're going to charge for it now, even though you could get them for free.
Yeah, though they did. They did change up a little. Like this one has modern controls, better support, a bunch of art gallery stuff. On the Switch, it looks like it's $17. I could be wrong. It's giving me in pounds. So hold on. I don't know why it defaulted to the British one. So that actually interested me because I like Lost Vikings. I've never played Blackthorn though, so I'm interested to give that a shot.
Just like the SNES era, I enjoy, and I do like it when publishers lean a bit more into their older library. Like, I think Nintendo is the worst offender in the sense that they know people want the ability to own the old games and play them on modern hardware without having to repurchase them every generation of consoles, and they still have not really come up with a great way to transfer those purchases, nor release them in a consistent way.
It's debatable whether they even want to, because they know, like, as people forget about it and then they release it, people forget that it's already been released for, like, the Wii when it's on the Switch.
Yes.
And it's a bit that's a bit of a frustration. And Blizzard it's harder for Blizzard to capitalize on that because once you release it on PC, you can you can find a way to make it work for most games, even if it's 1,000 years old.
Sure.
So the funny little bit of trivia with this is, if you notice, Lost Vikings 2 isn't on this, and that's because Blizzard can't get Lost Vikings 2. It's stuck in rights hell. They only have rights to the SNES version, and the PC version was not made by them, so they can literally never release it on PC because of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I actually played the PC one back in the day, and it was very late '90s graphics jank. It's a relic of its time. Had full voice acting though, so that was cool.
I didn't even know that it existed, to be honest. I saw it in the Carbot 30th anniversary cartoon, and it was just like kind of hanging out in the background as they were going down the stairs. It was like in the background. I thought that was funny.
That whole cartoon was top quality.
Yeah, it was good.
He does good work. But yeah, that's pretty much that's all you can really say about the arcade collection, I think, unless you...
One thing I wanted to bring up from last time, because we talked about the 30th anniversary bundle, and I compared it to essentially being the virtual ticket. And a commentator, I believe it was Necron, brought up a good point that they did not explicitly make that connection. That was me making that connection. It's basically saying The 30th anniversary bundle is not just like a random bundle that they're trying to like cash grab for. I mean, it is, but like it's associated with the BlizzCon virtual ticket. But because BlizzCon is entirely virtual, the way I have interpreted it, they did not advertise it as such, was that it was essentially the virtual ticket. Now, again, they didn't advertise it like that. Maybe they should have, but that's just my assumption, and I might be wrong about that.
See, I think that was I honestly think that was intentional, because if you advertise it as this is the substitute for the virtual ticket, people are going to go, wait, so do I need to pay to watch the stream?
Right.
And I think that was a very intentional move of like, this is a separate bundle that we're advertising with BlizzCon. By the way, it's completely free, and this isn't a virtual ticket. So that's just my thought. I think it was tactfully done and strategically done. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to address that because I mean, it was a completely valid point that, again, I think it was Necron had said, hey, they didn't advertise this as like the virtual ticket, so I don't know why you're saying that. And again, I'm making the assumption, and I very well might be wrong. I guess I was addressing the idea that, microtransactions, et cetera, that people complain about. And I was just talking about the consistency of the complaint of like, it's been this way for every BlizzCon, and it's cool to complain about it every year for that reason, but this is not like a separate new occurrence. It's basically the same thing they do every year.
Yeah. And you are right that they didn't have, like, they didn't push it that way, but I don't know. I think they still did in a way, because if you open up the BlizzCon stream, it's like, by the way, buy this bundle. That's
Yeah, and there's no way, they're not going to outright come out and say it in this case. It was just a weird year, so. But I just wanted to address that because that was a good point that I treated it as if that was definitely the case when they didn't say that was actually true. I just took it to be that way.
No, and that's valid. No, I get that. But
I think the fact that it was the 30th anniversary this year, the BlizzCon did feel a little bit more like BlizzCon of ages past, in the sense that there weren't any like huge announcements. Well, I guess there was Burning Crusade Classic and D2 Remastered, but these are all things looking back. I felt like every title had like a classic mode that we're looking at now. It was very nostalgic, or it was a very retro convention in that way.
And I know, and it kind of Overwatch 2 didn't even get a spot on stage, which is a bit of a shame. But definitely in that regard, a lot of classic modes, really, and some stuff looking forward to. But the big announcements were, of course, the two classic Burning Crusade and Diablo 2. I'm interested because they mentioned they have a lot more projects in the works, but I'm kind of happy they're not preemptively announcing them. I initially was a little bummed that there's like nothing new, but also like as we mentioned last week, I think Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 were announced way too early.
Yes.
And people then just get impatient of, where's my game? So I'd almost rather just wait, to be honest, and have a good and polished game than have something that everyone's pressuring them to release it. They got to push it back. Everyone gets mad that there's different like release dates. Yeah, I don't know. So hopefully next year we get some more stuff, but I'm actually happy that they didn't push something out to try to appease everyone.
I agree. I think the last 2 years, it was 2018 that I think was the real kicker that started the weird pendulum swinging, which was the Warcraft 3 Reforged announcement year. Mm-hmm. And then 2019 was the pendulum swinging back too far, where they said we need to announce more. And hopefully now they're sort of stabilizing and realizing that, hey, our old conventions worked really well, even though we didn't have tons and tons of things to announce. So it's acceptable to have, again, the older type convention, in my opinion. That's how I saw it, and I liked that. And again, they're leaning more into their older catalog. It's like last year was everything's new, everything new's coming out, except no, it's not for several years. And now we're going back to, okay, everything old's coming back out. We're looking back at what made us great, so we're focusing on those things, except StarCraft.
Yeah. I was going to bring it up because I know people are very bummed about the lack of StarCraft, but really, genuinely, I thought they had a pretty substantial amount of StarCraft content for a game they're not trying to market. Like, there's nothing new, obviously. I don't know if you caught, they had the Legends panel, they had the user-created content panel.
Yeah.
They had this really, like, for all games, really, but they had StarCraft too, a, like, very well-done art gallery that was, like, custom in the StarCraft format. You could zoom in on
I did like
models.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So I expected nothing, Heroes of the Storm got nothing, frankly. But the StarCraft content they did do was, I thought, the most they could do for a game that they're not trying to push and don't really have a dev team for.
So I think a lot of it kind of comes back to what I was just speaking about, which is what they've created expectations for around BlizzCon, where in the past it wasn't about there being an announcement every year, but rather it was more just having people who love the franchises come and sort of celebrate them, and maybe you'll hear something new, or you'll get like in-depth talks about them. You'll have like a lore panel, or you'll have some sort of panel to just kind of go more in depth, even if there wasn't something new announced. And I think that too many people now expect cons in general to be all about finding out something new. Like, here's the Elder Scrolls 6 splash screen that's not even in pre-development yet kind of situation. And I think that's a mistake, and they did it to themselves. I'm not blaming consumers for this. But I liked the older format better.
Yeah, I'll blame them a little. And you've been to BlizzCon before, so you kind of know this too, where the expectations of the people sitting at home, maybe not even watching the stream, but the people who are waiting for the big announcements, versus actually going to the convention, is two completely different, like wildly different expectations of what to get. Because the convention is so much you don't see on stream. It is a convention. It's not a trade show, and a very well done one at that. In terms of their management, I think it's the best convention I've been to, at least in terms of line management and all that.
So I've been to PAX a couple times, and I've been to BlizzCon once, and yeah, I agree. BlizzCon felt better managed in general. The schedule was a lot cleaner, and it felt like they had a general flow of the audience better. And I really enjoyed all the events and the things that I went to go see. I'm trying to think of what else I could comment on at going to BlizzCon, but I'm not going to go to BlizzCon because I want to hear the announcements, because you can hear the announcements anytime, immediately after they're announced, regardless of where you're at.
Yeah, you definitely go to talk with some of the writers and devs, get the demos, get some cool merch and stuff. It's definitely an expensive trip.
Yeah, and they had Patton Oswalt do a stand-up routine when I went. They had Jay Moore do the hosting, and he was hilarious. I went in 2008, so this was a long time ago. But was it 2008? Was it really that long ago? Yeah, it was 2008. And this was back when I was playing Burning Crusade, so I guess it's kind of topical.
Hey.
I went with some of my guildmates, and I thought that all the extra stuff that wasn't even necessarily Blizzard IP related was actually fantastic. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. So that's what you kind of go for. You're paying for a ticket, but you're getting a stand-up routine from a high-tier performer. You're getting really good music, live music, stuff like that. They had concerts this year they had Metallica, which was kind of funny, but stuff like that. There's a lot more actually going. It's more of a community event, which it's not just I want to go see the announcements, is the point.
And I went 2018 and 19. Was it 2018 and 19? Yeah, 18 and 19. And yeah, even those were supposedly the quote-unquote dead years for StarCraft, and as it's going exclusively for StarCraft, I still had a ball. They still had stuff for you, people to talk to, all that.
Right.
I will say, now that there's no dev team for StarCraft, I probably am going to wait till another announcement comes, but still, there's still more to do. It's, like you said, it's a convention, it's a celebration, it's a show, it's not a series of announcements.
And it's an opportunity to meet people that you are in a community with. I would imagine if I went next year, it'd be okay, well, maybe I can meet Subsourian in person, or maybe I can meet Loco in person, stuff like that. Whereas, I don't care necessarily about the announcements in person. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to have a different reason to go to any convention for that matter, I think.
Genuinely, the announcements are better at home than they are at the convention, because you're sitting in these chairs 30 rows back,
right,
on the screen. It's fine, but you get a better look at the small details if it's with your computer screen.
Well, that was when I went to PAX. I had a good time at PAX because I went with my friends, but the actual convention itself, it felt was lacking a lot. It's really meant for press, and I waited for hours to go into the Mass Effect Andromeda showcase. This was before it was released, so everyone was really excited. This was the most detail we were going to get, and it was the most boring, lamest thing. They crammed you into this giant hall, and it was like this big event. But like, I felt like I came away learning nothing and not excited for anything. And maybe, I mean, it was probably their fault with the presentation. But I just, as I waited, it took so long just to get in there, and then I realized I'm like, this wasn't worth it. Like, no matter what they show, this was a waste of time because I could have seen this at home.
Yep. I've got that feeling. I had the depressing story the last time I went when they announced Arcturus Mengsk on the main stage, and I was literally the only person in the entire audience who cheered. That was very sad and depressing.
Yeah, I feel like I think it was 2018 as well, where they had a bunch of StarCraft events scheduled, and they had pros that did like stacking mutators and stuff, which all seemed pretty cool. But I remember that they didn't really pan to the audience because there was barely anyone in it, because the way that they had scheduled it overlapped with like the biggest WoW panel or like the closing ceremony, stuff like that. And that's like a big bummer, and that it's a bad. It looks bad for people at home too, because then the chat just becomes super toxic about like, oh, there's nobody in the crowd, et cetera, and then that becomes the main focus. It's lame.
This year has taught me they're going to be toxic no matter what. God,
yes.
Chat,
Oh gosh, it was very brave of them to even have live chat on. I wish they didn't do that.
I think that's a YouTube like mandate, basic, because Blizzard now has a deal with YouTube. They do everything through YouTube, whereas before they did. Actually, no, they didn't even do Twitch previous years. They had some other thing, but yeah.
Heroes of the Storm had done Twitch, a couple announcements on Twitch.
Yeah, but the actual BlizzCon streams were done through some special service, and I don't remember who it was.
Okay.
Yeah, most StarCraft and Heroes of the Storm, and heck, even WoW, like everything non-BlizzCon was always done through Twitch before the YouTube deal, which is a shame because with YouTube, they lost the ability to do like content drops, which I thought was a really cool idea. It wasn't perfect, but it was a cool idea.
Yeah.
I don't know, I miss that.
So I wasn't able to watch StarCraft Legends live, and I haven't watched it yet because it was just 2 days ago, and I haven't had time. But did you catch it, and how was it?
Yeah, it was very good. So this and the community showcase, I know a lot of people are like, oh, they're kind of doing a dumbed down version, which they are, but it was catered to an audience who had never seen StarCraft or RTS and might want to get into it. So it was a more fun, like, yeah, Tasteless and Arcturus obviously were kind of doing simpler terms for people, but it was a more fun, like, free-for-all with your buddies kind of atmosphere, and I really appreciated that. I didn't catch all of them. I kind of had in the background of things, but it seemed like a good time. I enjoyed it as a little nod to StarCraft when they didn't have anything really planned for them. Having Tasteless and Arcturus there is also nice because they make anything fun.
Right. Well, that's good. I'm glad. I'm gonna definitely watch it, and that's something where I'm actually talking to the StarCraft Observer later today, as of the day we're streaming this, and I'm actually I'm gonna try to pivot the conversation where possible to talking about how the competitive scene struggles with appealing to its core audience, which is not going to grow any bigger unless you appeal to a different group, and that you could say that about any esport. It's not just StarCraft, and it's just an interesting topic to me.
Yeah,
where a lot of the diehard competitive scene are going to look at StarCraft Legends and be unsatisfied and say like, oh, why didn't they split the teams a different way, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas, again, like you had described it, it's meant to be a more, I don't know if inclusive's the right word, maybe a more...
No, it's the right word, I'd say.
Just having, more outreach, I should say, with the StarCraft stuff.
And I don't know if you saw the Locos user-generated content thing, but it was the exact same thing where everyone's like, oh, why didn't they do this campaign or this? It's like, yeah, they wanted to showcase, like, to people who've never seen it, what the custom campaign scene's like. So they showed, like, Direct Strike, which everyone plays, especially now that Auto Battler's a big thing. Mm-hmm. They showcase a campaign before Darkness Falls, which is like, hey, look how awesome the single-player content can be. And I actually didn't see the last one. I think it was a tower defense thing in Warcraft 3, but... Yeah,
so I think it was Footman Frenzy. I think, well, it might have been. I know that I don't know if I should get into this. The creator for Footman Frenzy got the thing to sign to say like, do you want to do this? And you have to sign it. And they like spread it all around, being like, look at these terms that Blizzard's making me sign. And it was like a very boilerplate agreement. But as you know, especially Warcraft 3, the Warcraft 3 community is like the worst offender of. As a catch-all term, I'll just say crazies. like ignorant crazies who assume the worst and like they don't understand much about the world around them. This is I shouldn't be doing this right now. But the point is, it was just a very boilerplate. Like, yes, I agree that you can use my map, and he's like, look, they're taking I'm signing over ownership of my map, and then the Warcraft 3 community, of course, went along with that and assumed that that was what that meant. I don't know. I could talk about this forever, but I think the point is, Footman Frenzy was supposed to be on there, and he probably just didn't sign it, and therefore was not on there, and that's why I thought Footman Frenzy was the one that was showcased.
Well, yeah, someone was talking about this actually, where the fact that what was showcased was also stuff that Blizzard has talked with before, has kind of vetted, so they didn't do like a whole deep dive into every map ever, but these were kind of... Loco's someone who's interacted with Blizzard a lot, they know his shtick, they don't need to... Yeah. It was very safe in terms of, like, they know what they're going to present.
Yeah. And, like, Before Darkness Falls, I would say doesn't have enough content, but is perfect for something like this, where it's a very surface level, like, hey, check this out, isn't this cool? And, like, I would say, well, there's not enough missions, so, like, do you really want to be advertising this to people? Because they're going to go look and be like, okay, well, it looks really nice, it's got really cool UI, it's got really good systems, but there aren't enough missions. But, like, that doesn't that's not... You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you could get into the weeds, but this is a convention where you're showcasing stuff. It's not about that.
I think it was perfect, mostly because it shows Before Darkness Falls is insanely pretty.
Yes.
And looks like a polished, like, fully released game. And to show, like, hey, the community just made something in our editor that looks like basically it could be a Blizzard release campaign. Like, yeah, it's a good entryway to show, like, you should explore our community or our campaign tab, or fan campaign, whatever they call that tab. The one they added that not many people use.
Yeah, the campaign tab. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so I think that was a interesting little bit.
It was just nice that they did that at all. It's the first time they've ever done anything like that. And it's one of those things where you're like, well, you probably could have done this 6 years ago, and it would have been a lot better. But, you know, it's fine. It's great.
I mean, again, I expected we get the Heroes of the Storm treatment and get nothing. So This was very good. Poor Heroes of the Storm. I love that game, but... Jeez. Oh, and small... Oh, go ahead.
So just, I guess, to wrap this up, I think they still see StarCraft as a core standalone IP, whereas Heroes of the Storm is, but it's a mixture of all of them, if that makes sense.
They've tried to push it as its own. Like, if you ever see a Heroes of the Storm thing now, it's always a fear, or I can't remember her name, girl with a coffin on her back.
Ophelia, yeah.
Ophelia, yeah, and Kira, the other character. They try to push the original characters they have because they want it to stand on its own IP.
Yeah.
But the sad part is, like, it'll always, like, that intro cinematic. It's always going to be the Blizzard Smash Brothers. It's not like, yeah, it's hard to get a full identity with that. But yeah, I mean, you can't do a 30th celebration of Blizzard and ignore StarCraft, even if you aren't selling anything with it. It's just it's one. They don't have enough IPs to really completely ignore one.
I mean, they could, but I mean, they ignored. They have noticed they've wrapped Warcraft. Warcraft now is just World of Warcraft. So that's they kind of ignored. I mean, they completely ignored Warcraft 3 Reforged, except for the one custom map that was shown, and I would too. Considering, number one, there isn't a team that's actively working on it because they all left, and
so actually, interesting
it's a convention.
Note.
Why would they? Yeah,
that was what I was about to bring up. Interesting note: they seem to be reforming classic games. I saw some people. I follow a few of the devs on Twitter, and a few of them were like, "I've been moved to this role in classic games." So they seem to actually be forming a classic games again.
Yep,
that's interesting and. Kind of good news. We'll see.
I mean, we talked about this already. I'd encourage people to go back and listen to. Was it our last one? I think it was our last one. Like,
might have been.
How many? Yeah. Again, it's the Warcraft 3 community that would make these comments. Blizzard doesn't care about Warcraft 3 Reforged, and it's like, well, there's no team. They all left. They weren't. I mean, I guess some of them were fired eventually, but there was no team left for them to work on anything. It's not like someone in management said, "We're not going to address Warcraft 3 Reforged because." We hate it. We're lazy and we don't like Warcraft 3 anymore. No, the team left. No one's working on it. They have nothing to present. So why would they put it in the schedule?
Yeah,
the
though I
most
do
they
find
could do is come out and say, hey, we wanted to show you stuff for Warcraft 3 Reforged. We understand it was a big problem. We apologize. We're reforming the team, and we're going to have updates coming again. But
yeah,
again, the best that they could do is make people understand that if you have no devs working on a game because they left of their own volition, then of course there's no new patches. It's not like there were devs that were directed to not work on Warcraft 3 Reforged. They had an idea of what they were going to do, and then eventually those people, as they should have, just left the company because they were treated like crap.
yep.
I don't know how many more times I could say it. But you still see the same thing about how Blizzard is lazy and how Blizzard, hates Warcraft 3 and doesn't care about Warcraft 3 Reforged. Like, maybe that's all true. I don't know. The point is, like, that has nothing to do with the current situation of not seeing Warcraft 3 Reforged at BlizzCon.
Yeah, though the interesting note, and you can note this if you look at the Diablo 2 announcement and panels, they always only mention StarCraft Remastered with it.
Yep.
And this is something they did with Diablo Immortal, where after the year after it got announced, they made an intentional effort to not mention it all the next con. And I think they're doing the same thing. We might see Reforged next con with more stuff and more spotlight, but I do think there was an intentional let's not talk about it for a little bit.
I mean, of course, I think that was the right decision. I don't know what they would have said or done to appease the people for Warcraft 3. Because I mean, the other thing too is, like, I'm not defending Warcraft 3 Reforged. It was terrible, but what I will defend is just this weird rhetoric about it that makes no sense and is completely misinformed.
But I will say the Diablo remaster coming back to what you said with Mass Effect and what we were talking about, the Diablo remaster seems to be very much the same in that they are very upfront in what they're offering, and it seems to be pretty manageable, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I think when Warcraft 3 Reforged was announced, it was very clear, or rather it wasn't very clear. I was going to say it was very clear that they didn't know 100% what was going to be in it. But D2 seems a lot clearer.
The new stories and all that. I'll be honest. People were like, "Oh, they promised these new stories that would fit in better with WoW," and I'm like, I'm kind of glad they got rid of those. I don't want those.
Yeah.
I guess as an option, it'd be fine. But,
well, and they blamed people like you for why they didn't do it, as opposed to just saying we hemorrhaged our team and didn't have time.
Yeah, I'll take the blame for that.
They said, "Oh, well, the community told us they didn't want those things."
Yeah. I honestly, and I played at the con it was announced and gave feedback of I really didn't like the redone. Like, I wish they had the option for old maps because they showed calling it Stratholme and it was shaped like WoW, and it just didn't feel right to me anyway. But it was also not completely finished. So that was my feedback was, hey, can you at least give us the option to play the old map?
It's still, I mean, that's one that they did completely remake, and it still feels weird. Like, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the game. It felt like they wanted to do the whole game that way, and if they would have, then cool. And then you still have the option to play the old one, is what I would have expected. They did a few maps, like 3, and then they said, okay, well, we're clearly not going to finish this in time, so they scrapped it, and they focused on making sure the engine worked and getting all the art assets done.
But, well, either way, on the more positive topic, the graphics I don't know if you've seen the graphics for Diablo 2.
Yeah!
It looks pretty good, actually.
It reminds me of StarCraft Remastered in the sense that they're clearly staying true to the original. It looks like a hybridized, isometric, but updated set of graphics.
And the thing for me that actually, Diablo's okay. It's probably my least favorite Blizzard franchise just because I'm not an ARPG fan. But it's coming out for Switch, and that probably will push me over the edge to buy it alone because I can have this on a handheld console that's not like a phone that I know will be able to run it at its full capacity.
Yep.
So that probably will have me get it.
I thought when he was saying, because they were saying it's going to be available on other consoles, and J. Allen Brack sort of led up to that to repeat that right after D2 was announced in the opening ceremony, and I thought he was going to say that it would also be available on mobile. I think that'd be cool. I mean, I don't see why it couldn't.
If they could make it work. I mean, it's not like, again, you were mentioning last time, it's not like Diablo has a particularly hard control set to really manage. I don't know. Switch, I think, works fine, though. Yeah. I'm fine with Switch.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, Switch is a perfect console for that kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah. The only thing that's a bit funky, I don't know if you've seen what they're offering. So first off, it's a $40 game, which that's fine. I mean, it's a pretty steep graphical upgrade.
Is it 40? I thought it was 60.
So it's 60 for the extra bundle, and usually, they usually do a digital deluxe bundle, and I mean, I don't often get it, but usually it's for you get the game and you get goodies across every like other game, Warcraft, StarCraft, Overwatch.
Okay.
This time the $60 bundle includes Diablo 2 and 3, and like a pet and some wings. But it's like $20 more, and if you already own Diablo 3, it only discounts $7, which is like it's such a strange bundle because usually the people who buy those extra bundles are like the big fans or
Right.
so
you're paying $13 for for an in-game Diablo 3 pet and wings.
And not even related to Diablo 2. That's the thing. You don't get anything for 2 except it's just such a strange bundle. It's not like I just don't get it. I figured anyone who would be going into this would probably either really already own 3 or like be really mad about 3 and not want to own it.
Right.
So, I don't know. I just don't see who that's appealing to.
Yeah, that is weird. Even with remastered, I don't remember if there was anything at launch. There were portraits, I think.
They had a pretty big. They had the WoW mount, the Meat Wagon mount, which is actually pretty cool. The portraits, the.
So I was thinking more for actual remastered itself, though. There still isn't really that much.
Oh yeah, for you mean stuff to unlock in Reforged or Remastered? Or?
So like pre-ordering StarCraft Remastered, I don't think got you any in-game remastered stuff.
It got you the command center, the town hall.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the town hall skins. Cool. Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, it took me a second. Also, Stukov for free, but that's I think you get that if you just buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they had that was actually pretty cool. I wish they did more with those skins, but I can kind of see why they didn't. It's a shame though.
Well, that's another one where they had more patches lined up, and then that team was dissolved, and or the people on it had started leaving, so they just didn't. They haven't done anything. And I mean, to be fair, I think StarCraft Remastered is essentially done, and if they wanted to add anything, it would probably be cosmetic related.
I know a lot of people are mad because they, at the launch, said, we're going to add 2v2 ladder, which, I mean, there is a community for it, I guess, but they never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few empty promises that never manifested. Grant Davis recently left, who was kind of the head of that whole project.
Yes.
But, yeah, so. Unlike Warcraft, like, there's no... If you buy StarCraft Remastered, aside from, I know, some map-making stuff from before, but for the layman, it's a straight upgrade. Like, there's no downside to getting remastered.
Right, and you can still, I mean, it's very easy to download localized copies of the older versions of the game. So
yeah, and
for the small, more niche communities that want that, it's there.
Yeah, and I get that it's harder to really get your work out for a lot of map makers if you don't have that, but oh well.
So back to BlizzCon.
Yeah.
I played World of Warcraft primarily during Burning Crusade. So.
And I quit Burning Crusade because I got mad at the story.
Oh, really? Okay. I mean, I know a lot of people that didn't like how the Warcraft 3 characters were treated, but I think that Burning Crusade was kind of the high point of WoW for the people that wanted to really spend the time on it.
Yeah, it was a beautiful expansion, and I'm interested to see how far they go with this, actually, because, like, Burning Crusade, I think the first 3 people have a ton of nostalgia for, but after that, there's really no need to do a dedicated server. Like, Cataclysm was kind of the point where everything changed and it's kind of stayed the same. So
yeah, that's been a common topic I've seen is when are they going to stop with the classic stuff? And
I think it has to be Wrath, in my opinion. I can't see them going further than that.
I
mean, Wrath makes sense. Like, I think everyone likes Wrath. In my opinion, it was the high point. But
I stopped before Wrath, so I can't comment. But I agree. From what I understand, Wrath just sort of took BC, made it slightly less extreme, and it was like a nice happy medium.
Yeah. Actually, I take that back. Mists is probably my favorite expansion, but I like Wrath a lot.
So, question about Mists. Is everything that happened in Mists basically still available? Because I thought everything post-Cataclysm has essentially stayed the same.
Well, that's why they can't really there's no need to get a dedicated server, because the only thing that's not available is they had a overarching legendary cloak quest line, and Warlords had the same thing. where there was a story that you can no longer get that's basically like was going to weave through the expansion. It was pretty well done. I kind of wish they'd offer it again because it's kind of important to like a lot of stories they told later. But yeah, that's the only thing that you can't do currently. And I get people want to play with a cap of that level, but I don't know. I can't see that being a big advertising push of when you can do 99.9% of the content of those expansions.
Agreed. That's why I think Wrath is probably where it would stop, and then from there, maybe they can just monetize more, like, time frame specific stuff to kind of keep that going. But
on Burning, so I don't know if you saw Burning Crusade. They actually do intend to do some fixes with this one, which is interesting. So, well, I don't know the full extent of them. I know the one they brought up was that the character menu was completely messed up if you play Draenei. So they're doing some small fixes. I'm curious how the community is going to react to that.
Yeah, I honestly didn't pay much attention with original Classic, and as someone who's completely disconnected, all I hear about it is that the Classic community is pretty toxic compared to retail.
Anytime you got a community that's kind of backward looking, I wouldn't say backward looking, but wants a experience that's completely pure, but also sometimes wants some updates, but then if you update, you're ruining the vision for some people. I think it's hard to satisfy those people.
Yeah, you can't please everyone for sure in that case. But this is the one, because this is when I played the majority of my WoW days. Actually, all of my WoW days were Burning Crusade, actually. I stopped before started right after BC was released. And like I have some really good memories, but there's also like a black hole of time that's lost forever where like, hey, there were some really good high points, but at the same time, there's a ton of time that I'll never remember and it's just sort of gone forever.
Yeah, no, I get that too. I've stopped playing WoW for a bit because of that.
But yeah, BC was like a big time commitment. Like it was insane how much time you had to put in if you wanted to actually do the high end rating. Like I think it was, I forget the exact numbers, but a very, very low proportion of raiders ever made it to even Black Temple, and they had to remove the attunement requirements at a certain point because not enough people were getting through the lower raids.
Well, that was a vanilla thing, and why they talked about when Wrath when they released Naxxramas, it was like 0.2 or something % of players that even entered Naxxramas.
Yeah, and then they released the Expo before many, like it was the same as Sunwell Plateau. Like there wasn't even an attunement requirement for Sunwell Plateau, I think, or if there was, they removed it, but barely anybody ever got in there to do anything.
Sunwell I actually enjoyed because one thing you could do, even if you didn't raid, was there was that whole island where you build up forces, you do a lot of dailies.
Yeah, Quel'Danas, yeah,
Quel'Danas. It felt like an event, which I went back later and did. I didn't experience it at the time, but I felt it felt really well done in that regard. I don't know if there was an attunement for that or not.
There wasn't an attunement, but yeah, that was one of the first instances of like a more server-based progression system. It was kind of like a more refined AQ event in the sense that you, as a server, turned in these daily quests, and then eventually it would unlock new vendors, and like your allies would like branch out to new little outposts the further out, like the more that was completed.
Yeah, and I enjoy that. Like, I'm hoping they do that for more. They do always do a pre-expansion event, and I was always hoping they'd do something where it's a server-based one, but I don't know. I think it's hard to manage.
I'm sure that they'll do the opening of the Dark Portal event again.
Oh, definitely. I can't see them not doing that, but we'll see. I think it's hard to recapture Classic was what everyone wanted, and I can't see the same hype for the other two as, I mean, Classic it's a big deal bringing back Classic because there's so much, it's so incredibly different, but as you start moving forward, less and less become different that people really want. Like it becomes closer to retail.
Right. Yeah. Well, BC was like Classic Plus, to be honest. They're really, I mean, it added a ton of new content, and it was challenging. I'm kind of curious to see, because I would say, like, Classic was genuinely easy, but we didn't know it at the time because communication was a lot different, and the way that people were able to work together to do these things was a lot different, and we were younger. Whereas now, Classic, people are breezing through the content, and I'm curious to see if BC will be the same. I think it will be, but not as exaggeratedly easy as Classic was.
Yeah, Classic also had the problem of, without that good communication, like you had Ventrilo, and you needed to herd 40 people, and that alone is a massive challenge.
Yes.
To get them to do anything. I'm curious how the smaller number of people per raid is going to really impact how people breeze through Burning Crusade. Because as you learn with Classic, like I mentioned, they did, I think it was day 2 of was it Zul'Gurub? I can't remember the Classic
Zul'Aman?
raid. Zul'Aman, yeah.
That one was BC.
Zul'Aman's
Zul'Gurub
Yeah.
was Classic, yeah.
But yeah, Classic, they did an all level 59 priest run of Zul'Gurub, like day 1, because, I mean, it's not too, it wasn't as difficult as people remember.
Right.
Once you've learned everything.
Yep. It's interesting how, again, now that you approach it now, our information, our ability to gather information and to communicate is a lot better. And also, the people that are playing Classic are the ones that likely already have or are at the very least committed to making sure that you have successful raids. The one thing that Burning Crusade introduced with the raids is there were a lot fewer tank and spanks, and there were a lot more instances where small individual portions of the raid were responsible for really important things, and they all had to succeed or the whole raid would wipe. And that's why I think it might be a little different than Classic in the sense of how people find it to be easy.
I mean, going back soloing stuff at pain in the butt with all those mechanics, I remember.
Right. Like, I remember Terran Gorfiend in Black Citadel, he would put a debuff on you and you would die at a certain amount of time, and you became a ghost, and you had to kill other ghosts, and if you didn't, they would enter the raid and kill everybody, and you were the only one that could interact with them directly. So, like,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm interested because of I actually think they've been doing a pretty good job with Classic and, like, porting things out gradually. So I'm curious to see if this really catches fire, because I think a lot of people, their experience was Burning Crusade, where that tended to be a big high point. The first 3 people tend to look upon with a lot of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see. And I know, like, with this one actually doing quality of life changes, we'll see how far they go.
Yeah, I'm sort of curious to know what they're going to do. Like, it's been so long since I played it. Like, to me, looking back, I don't remember anything that was like, they needed to change this very badly. Like, maybe increasing the daily quests outputs so that it wasn't as nightmarish to do. But that's like a more retail change where someone like me who's older, and I'm like, there's no way I can go back to this game because at BC time, I had to put in so much time to be a raid leader and do anything. Whereas, like, retail is a little more accessible for someone like my age and with the amount of time I can put into it. I'm like, if they could make BC more like that, I would like that. But most of the people, I would imagine the target audience for BC Classic is not that.
Yeah. Though, interestingly, retail's in a bit of hot water right now with its announcements. I don't know if you've heard much about it, but so they announced their new content patch, and that's normal. But one thing they did announce is, so at the launch of Shadowlands, a big thing was they're updating all of the cosmetics, giving more race options, and that ended up being a huge deal to a lot of people. And then this con, they're like, actually, we're not going to do any more for this expansion. They had announced that they were going to do more initially, and now they're like, no, we're not. And a lot of people are incredibly angry about it. And it kind of, to me, shows a bit of a change in the MMO audience, because the big competitor to WoW now is Final Fantasy XIV, and the joke's always that the end game of that is dress up. But people are now coming to MMOs more as a social experience to show off their avatars and not necessarily be like a end game like raid thing. And it's an interesting shift, because this ended up causing a lot of, like, way more than I thought of, like, people genuinely angry. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing to look at.
So I'm not sure I fully understand, if you could explain more. So they're upset that existing cosmetics are being expanded to be used by other classes or races?
So the big thing in Shadowlands launch is they added a lot more racial cosmetics, like you could change to different breeds of troll, a lot of different skin colors for human. Elves as well. And their big thing was, we're going to roll out more to make everyone kind of as expanded as the races we did at launch as Shadowlands rolls out. And that got a lot of people very excited. And then this con, they announced, actually, we're not going to do any more for all of Shadowlands. So I think the fact this hit so hard is kind of showing a shift in how people play MMOs. And obviously there's always going to be the gameplay core audience, but the fact that this is such a big deal to people is just, it's interesting to me.
Did they give a reason why they're not doing it? And if not, what do you suspect?
The reason they gave was, it'll cost you a raid tier. I don't know if you've heard that old joke, that it's essentially like, well, we're focusing on other things.
Yeah.
And I think I genuinely think it's kind of a not under, like, and it's ironic because this is getting compared a lot to Final Fantasy XIV, which its whole thing at launch was not understanding how WoW had changed the MMO market from Final Fantasy XI. And I think this is them not understanding how the MMO market has changed, because while it's not confirmed, everyone stopped putting out numbers, but people are suspecting Final Fantasy XIV's finally beat out WoW in subscription numbers. So now that's the king top dog. So I think it's genuinely WoW not kind of seeing where the wind's blowing with what people are wanting in an MMO experience. So I don't know.
So I imagine it's a very difficult line to tread, and also getting that information, because your most vocal people are going to be the people that likely don't care about the cosmetics as much, and they're more wanting more of like the classic type content that they see as more hardcore, even though now it's super easy. But like TBC, for example, is going to be considered a more hardcore experience because it was more challenging and required a lot more time. So they have that as one half of your subscription, but then on the other hand, retail is seen as more accessible. And if they're going to focus more on like rating, tiers stuff in that case, again, that's what kind of your core audience wants, but you're not going to grow it very much by doing that.
And I mean, we've talked about this with StarCraft. It's kind of the same deal of, Tim Morton even talked about, like the esports competitive side is the vocal, like big core of the scene, but they're like a very small minority. Like right. the biggest is the casual audience who want to play campaigns or arcade or co-op. Like that's the big breadth of who's actually makes the money for your game. So it's an interesting balancing act appealing to both, because you obviously want that core because it gives your game depth and a good sense of balance, and if you want to dive in, you can get really deep and spend your life on it. But I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see how they pivot, because like I said, there a lot of very vocal community figures are getting very vocal.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's the big drama. That's the only big drama I've seen this con. I'm interested to see how that pans out, because WoW's still one of their big money makers. Well, actually, the big drama was Overwatch 2 didn't get main stage, but that's fine.
Yeah, and they don't say like, "Hey, we don't have any other news." It's weird because it's similar to the whole classic team people leaving. It's like you can kind of infer why they don't do it, because it's very much like it's a publicity thing. Yeah. But at the same time, you can kind of infer the reason, which is there's nothing new. The development, we announced it too early. But like, do you really expect them to come out and say, "Hey, sorry, we announced Overwatch 2 too early"? Like they're just not going to say anything. It's makes sense.
And they did a little like thing at the end where, hey, we got a bunch of other games. Like there are big focuses, our new stuff. They even kind of hinted they were doing a new IP, which is interesting. I mean, we know nothing about that, but it'd be cool to see.
I kind of hope so. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm interested. It depends on the genre. Like I liked Overwatch a lot, so. But yeah, I played it at 2019. And I can definitely say they announced Overwatch 2 way too early.
Okay.
It was not like Diablo 4 was a polished experience, and if they released a demo like that, I think people would love it. Overwatch 2 was not good.
Gotcha.
It felt very janky. So I'm not surprised, and I think it's going to be like at least another year before we hear a release date.
See, it makes you wonder why they didn't announce D4 last year and then announce Overwatch 2 this year.
They panicked because of Diablo Immortal. That was the stated reason.
Yeah.
They wanted to show that no, we are making games, and those were the two that they thought would be the big.
Yep.
Like, no, really, we're making PC games, guys.
Well, again, it's all about how they set the expectations for what the convention is supposed to be now. And they're projecting to people who are watching that it's about announcements, when in the past it was less about that.
Well, because announcements get people in the door. I'm actually curious whether they're going to keep the virtual... I really hope they don't, because I would love to go back to BlizzCon, and it's a very fun experience. But if they keep some of the aspects of the virtual convention going, or even if they switch, like, do a Nintendo Direct thing, I think not, but...
Well, again, that is basically a transition straight into this is announcements strictly, and that's that.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are very upset because BlizzCon is a huge event for a lot of people, especially cosplayers and all that. So, though the community stuff this year, I thought they did a good job. If you all want to catch that, it's solid.
I love the costume contests; they're so funny.
Yeah. And they got the guy who plays Reinhardt to do it, and he is he just done last year, and I think he might have done the year before that, but he is a fantastic host. I absolutely love him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the hosts usually do a good job. Again, I haven't gone. It's been 13 years at this point, about like 12 years at this point, and it was Jay Moore, and I remember he was doing some pretty lewd humor, and there were clearly a lot of kids there, and they pulled him off stage at one point, probably to tell him, like, hey, tone it down. And he came out, this was in the middle of the costume contest, and the first joke he made upon coming back was, hey, so I guess they didn't tell the contestants the number one rule, which is you need to cut fucking eye holes into your costume. Because, like, right before that, there were people who, like, couldn't see, and they were, like, bumping into stuff. It was funny. And it was clear that they pulled him off because he was cursing too much, and the first thing he did when he came back out was that.
Oh, God, that's beautiful. Yeah, they do generally good hosts. I'm interested to see who they do in the future. And yeah, the cosplays just keep getting better and better. Some of them are insane. Jesus.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because the one thing that, like, going to PAX, for example, taught me was I'm not a big convention person, in the sense that I'm not going to go and spend 3 hours in line to play a 15-minute demo. Mm-hmm. I just don't care enough about literally anything at these cons to do that. But there's so many cool little booths at PAX, for example, where the developers are there, and it's like a 2 or 3 person team, and they are so happy to watch anybody play their stuff. There's usually not a line, and you can play all sorts of goofy and interesting stuff, and they are just thrilled. They'll be there, and they'll talk to you directly. As opposed to, again, when I went, it was Mass Effect Andromeda, and you could wait 2 hours to play, like, 10 minutes of the multiplayer. I just said, I don't care about this. And even though I love Mass Effect, and BlizzCon is kind of like that experience of the little booths, but it's the bigger games. That was my experience, at least.
Yeah, and I think a big difference also is the fact that it's so specialized. If you go to PAX, I went to PAX East a few years. You're not really gonna talk to the devs necessarily, or the people behind the game. Whereas with BlizzCon, it's like you can meet the people making StarCraft currently or Warcraft and talk to them, or chat with the writers and all that. Yeah. And that's a pretty unique thing. And I think, Firaxis had a con for Civ. My friend went there and said he talked to a few people behind the team. And I'm hoping that means we'll get the rise of these specialty cons, because I think that's a more unique experience than a broad E3 PAX gaming convention.
Agreed.
I don't know. I think that's what makes it.
It's very subjective. I think some folks like to go to something like PAX and they are just thrilled to be in a giant sea of people. For me, it's not that I'm overwhelmed. I just feel like there's nothing to do. Yeah. And while it is a video game convention, I sort of feel like the last thing I want to do at a video game convention is play a truncated demo of a video game. I don't know if that makes sense. I guess that's why I'm saying cons just aren't really for me, but I have been to a couple where I just thought it was really cool, and it's usually the more community-focused stuff.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, especially because a lot of them either are they're either really truncated, or they don't present the file. They aren't particularly great. They're very work in progress. But I mean, yeah, it's again a community-focused one will almost usually be about something you care about, and thus you'll want to stay in line to see the new Warcraft or something,
right?
Ideally. But yeah, I had another point. Oh yeah, so the side note, I'm also not a convention person because I hate standing for 10 hours, and they started offering something called the Portal Pass at BlizzCon, which we were initially iffy on, but it gives you access to this lounge with all these couches, and God, that was the best investment I made in my life. Oh, I was so sore after that con. I just could lay down and die, and just having the extra money to have that in the convention center was so nice. So if you ever do that and you hate standing like me, you should get that ticket.
Yes, it's been so long since I've gone. I think I have a romanticized version of old BlizzCon, because when I went, there really weren't lines for anything. There was a line to play StarCraft, the demo for StarCraft 2, but to go to any of the show stages, there was never a line to get in because there was always enough space. That's why I thought it was a pretty well planned con. If you wanted to go see something, you didn't have to compared to Mass Effect Andromeda at PAX, you had to wait in line forever just to get in because you wanted to see it. Whereas to see the StarCraft 2 trilogy announcement when they announced it was going to be 3 games, there was just more than enough seating to just go. If you wanted to go to that thing, you could just show up right when it started and you'd find a seat, no matter what it was.
And they're pretty good about that, even at least last time I went. For all I know, things could change. The line management, in spite of the fact it's literally at capacity now because it's growing every year, you don't have to wait too long in line compared to we were mentioning PAX. when I were playing Overwatch at PAX East back when it was announced, I think we waited like 2 hours just standing.
Yeah.
It was quite a mess. But this one, they more space, less games, so they can afford to like have an entire hall of computers, so everyone gets a chance to play.
Now, if you can go to a con with a press pass, that's the golden ticket.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
And maybe, I don't know. I don't think I'm eligible for that.
Yeah, well, if StarCraft comes back into Gauche, I think you actually might be. Who knows?
That'd be cool. I mean, even just like PAX, I'm like, well, I have a YouTube channel. They usually have specifics, like you need to pull in this amount of these metrics in order to be eligible for a press pass.
Yeah. I don't know with Blizzard because they're pretty lenient when it comes to who like, because a lot of streamers and bloggers will like get that kind of treatment where usually it's for interviews is the biggest thing press passes will get you with Blizzard that I've noticed because they have a special press room. But I don't know. I think it depends because the idea of what is press has changed so much. So
Yes, exactly.
but yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm trying to think. I watched bits and pieces of it. I had a list of the stuff they announced. We talked about conventions in general. Is there anything that you want to hit on?
Let me look at the list real quick. Diablo 4 got the Rogue. I'll briefly say, I mean, I'm not a big Diablo fan, but I really appreciate how the scale seems to be a lot smaller. And this goes back to something people complain about in StarCraft. They're like, well, they killed a god. How are they going to go any further than this? It has to be a bigger scale. It's like, you literally don't have to do a bigger scale. You can do a smaller story and people are going to be fine as long as the game's good.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And I think Diablo 4 is, at least from what they've been showing, is kind of going with that of a much smaller, like less grandiose adventure across like the universe. So that we'll see. I hope it's good. It looks fun. But other than that, yeah, I think we hit on everything. Overwatch 2. Oh, Hearthstone, I think had some fantastic announcements, and I think was the winner of this convention in terms of I might actually play Hearthstone again. But that was about it. I mean, yeah, they introduced a core set, which was the biggest thing of like, well, I want to play, but I haven't played in years, and all my cards are now invalid. But now with a core set, you don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, I'm excited.
I've never played Hearthstone. I mean, I'm aware of Hearthstone and how to play it. I've never played any deck builder, but I agree. It seemed like they had the most well put together presentation of the different games.
And also, so a lot of people sleep on their single player content, and I think genuinely it's very well done and fits kind of the style of game that it has. And they're doing a new, like, I think they're calling it Mercenaries mode. Kind of almost works like co-op Commanders, at least from what I saw, where it's like you have a character and you level them up, and the more you do this like roguelike dungeon thing, the more they level up. So, I mean, I'm interested to see that because that seems like it could be really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they by far the most well put together announcements and the most like I don't know. It seemed like it made me excited to think of Hearthstone's future, whereas before I was just like, I don't want to. I'd have to spend like $100 to get a competitive fun deck, and I don't want to deal with that.
Yep, that's probably the biggest turnoff for most deck builders, in my opinion.
I mean, at least with like Magic, you can sell the cards. I mean, digital ones are especially bad because you spend so much money for a JPEG, and you can't resell anything. So.
Yep. But you can break them down into little bits of dust or something, and then you can use 1 billion dust to make one bad card.
Yeah, a single legendary, and you need like 6 to make a good deck. It's like, great. Thanks guys.
Maybe it's something I'll check out, though. One day you said there's like an interesting... that I saw the Mercenaries mode. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah, again, their single-player stuff's always been very well done. There's a few missteps, but generally it's like you pay $10, you get this cool mode, and it's... Yeah, I've enjoyed them. That's been my big thing lately of Hearthstone, so...
Cool.
Yeah, but I think that hits on everything.
It does. Well, yeah, it was BlizzConline.
Conline, yeah.
BlizzConline, yeah, and I think they did fine. They maybe need to advise the presenters who are not professional presenters to not stand with their hands at their sides awkwardly. Like, either talk with your hands or fold your hands across one another in front of you or behind you, but just standing there. I know they probably tell them, like, don't put your hands in your pockets, don't cross your arms, don't put your hands on your hips, because that's all, like, negative more imposing body language. So instead, they just stand as awkwardly rigid as possible. Some of the better ones, some of the better like devs that are forced to speak on these poor people, they usually speak with their hands at least. But
so that's been I mean, it's not an appeal that they stand awkwardly, but the fact it's just the devs instead of like with a lot of E3 press shows, it's like famous speaker guy.
Right.
I've always thought that was a big appeal of BlizzCon, is the fact that it is the dev of the game who made the game and knows like what they're making, speaking to the audience. But
I agree, but I feel bad for them.
I do too. I mean, I'm definitely not saying I hope they're really awkward this year.
Nice.
I'm happy they kept that. So.
I agree. It does make it a little more, I guess, personalized. Maybe that's not the best word, but more in depth.
It means you can have a QA panel and not like the dev's gonna know what you're talking about, and so
Yep.
Cool.
Very nice. Well, hey, thanks for talking to me about this, and I guess we'll see everyone next time. I don't know what topics are in our future, but something will come up.
Yep. Everyone submit your maps for Maporino. It'll be fun.
Do it.
Do it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
See ya.